Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cup of Joe with Joe and Joe podcast. I am your host, Joe, and with me, as always, is my wonderful co-host, Joe.
Oh, please tell me that sounded good.
I think it did. I think it was a nice, clean little sip of coffee right there. Could you tell I did not have one in front of me?
Yeah, I think you don't have too much experience doing the sip of coffee. I'm kind of the
I don't know
the
how to-
aficionado when it comes to that.
Yes, you are the coffee aficionado, the coffee connoisseur, but not of coffee in general, just of the sipping of the coffee.
See,
so good,
I mean,
every time.
it makes sense. I mean, normal coffee, I'm okay. But when it comes to the sip of a coffee, that's what I got my PhD in.
Wonderful. They're thrice in like a minute, Joe. My God, so good. Okay, this is not the content people are here for.
It actually is
today. Oh, okay. Well, I guess we can just stick around for like a half hour and just talk about coffee sipping sounds.
That's what I always
so
wanted the podcast to be about.
This is the final form
This
of
is
the
it,
podcast.
Joe. We're abandoning everything. It just becomes coffee and Gilmore Girls, okay? This is what the dream is.
Both things I am very not versed in. Okay, let's instead of doing that, because I don't know anything about any of that, let's talk about anime. Yeah?
Weeb shit.
Weeb shit. But this weeb shit is special because it was made in the 90s.
Yes, like all the good animes.
Did you just put an S on the end of anime?
Yes, I did it on purpose.
Okay, good.
I'm
Good.
I'm an imbecile, but I'm not an imbecilean.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, it's episode 20. We're talking about Princess Mononoke. For anyone who's still here after all of that. Okay, so you picked it last week, so that means that I've got to do the rundown, don't I?
Oh yeah, baby.
Okay. Getting ready. Okay, so it starts off with an actually really incredible sequence. Like, I didn't realize it. It's always really funny when you watch something and you're like, oh yeah, this is good, and then you watch it and you're going to talk about it later, and then you're like, holy crap, this is actually really good. So you start off. It takes place in like older times Japan, also a bit of a fantasy world. We'll get into it. And you meet up with your main character, Prince Ashitaka. And Prince Ashitaka, he's riding his elk, and he's, like, prancing around, and then all of a sudden, all the three little girls come up, and they're just like, Ashitaka, Ashitaka, and he's like, yeah, what's up? And they're like, the guy says something's over there, and he's like, all right, you guys go back to the town, and go get safe. And he runs on up, and the old guy up on the top of, like, this lookout tower is all like, hey, Ashitaka, so, yeah, I can sense the evil thing in the woods over there. And Ashitaka's like, what is that? And he looks over, and he sees coming up over the stone wall. It's like, what's that coming over the hill? Boom, 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 boom. It's a big boar, and it's gonna fucking kill all of you. So, to not allow that, Ashitaka gets onto his elk, Yakul, and they go bounding down a mountain. They kill the boar, but not before Ashitaka tries to be diplomatic. He's like, hey, boar, demon spirit, please leave our town in peace. And the boar is all like having none of that. So it shoots out some weird, like, goopy little worms, and it touches his arm, and oh no, now he's cursed. So because he's cursed, he's gotta, like, whoop-de-doop-de-doo, leave his town. But then Kaya, his little sister, who's not supposed to watch him leave because it's something about their customs and all that shit, is all like, hey, big brother, I'm gonna give you this little crystal dagger thing. And he's like, oh, sweet, thank you. Okay, I'm never gonna see you again. Bye-bye. And so he rides off into the night, and then we get this beautiful montage of him, like, traveling about the lands. And then he comes across a couple of different characters. First, he comes across a monk, fat old monk who's actually incredibly agile. It's very mind-boggling. And then he comes across Lady Eboshi and some of her soldiers, and Toki, who I think is best girl in this anime. And they kind of make up the Iron Town, which is the Iron Town. I just broke from it all because of that. No, keep it together. He meets Iron Town, which is like this more industrial little, I would say village, but it is much bigger than a village sort of place. And Lady Eboshi
Some would call it
running all
a
of
town.
That. It's a little bigger than a town. I think. No time, Joe. Rapid. So he kind of goes into there and he meets a bunch of little people in there. And so basically the conflict is that Lady Eboshi kind of was the one that created guns and shot the boar that then became a demon and then cursed Ashitaka. And so Ashitaka in his travels is all like, okay, so I'm going to try and find a way to cure this curse, which brings him to the west and finds all of them. And he's like, ooh, this stuff you're doing here is evil. And he's trying to also find the, whatchamacallit, the forest spirit. And as he's trying to find the forest spirit, he also runs into San, who is the princess. But her name isn't Mononoke, because Mononoke actually means like vengeful spirits or something like that in Japanese. I learned that because of research, Joe. And she's with a couple of wolves. They're really cool. We'll talk about them in a little bit. I don't want to get into it right now. But so basically, then Ashitaka kind of goes along, and he's all like, la da 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 da. Oh no, there's conflict between San and the wolves, and really all of nature, and then Irontown, because industrialism bad to nature. Who would have thunk? And so there's a little bit of fighting, and then a head is lost. It's not very good. And then after the head is lost, a lot of death, and then not so much death, because head returned, but then evaporation, and I will elaborate on that maybe later, or we could just end it right here, because I think that was a perfect encapsulation of the story, Joe.
You started off strong, and then you didn't.
I think it was a 10 out of 10 all the way through.
No. Not at all. Well, Joe, you did your best, but you got some work you need to do. You're not on my level yet, but we're talking about Princess Mononoke. And, Joe, this is my favorite Ghibli movie. It, hands down, it's been decided, my favorite Ghibli movie. I used to have a hard time deciding. I mean, I literally just watched Porco Rosso about 10 minutes before this. Princess Mononoke is the best. Hands down. I don't know about you, but for me, it's the best.
Yeah, I'd say it is. I think it's like there are two that constantly contend with me for number one. It's always between Mononoke and then also Castle in the Sky, and like those two for me have always pretty much been the ones that have eternally battled for the number one spot. And after like rewatching this, I might be with you, because like, all right, animation of this movie, holy Christ. Like, I said it in my intro thing, I never realized as I was watching it really just how insane some of the animation in this movie was. Like when I looked into it, I was like, this opening scene with the boar and like the Nago is the name of the boar that curses Ashitaka. All the worm stuff that's like swirling around him, and it's like a venom symbiote before they had like animated venom stuff. Actually, he might have been animated in the animated series before this. I don't know. I don't care. This looks way better. It's just so cool, and it prompted me, Joe, to look up like if there was any CGI used in this movie. And as it turns out, unless my source is wrong, and I did not cite, so I'm sorry, school or scholarly people listening, but from what I had researched, it said that this was the first movie that not Makoto Shinkai, fucking Miyazaki. Thank you. My brain was melting down. That Miyazaki allowed CGI in this film, and it's not a lot. They say it's about like 10 minutes of the entire runtime is like there's some form of CGI in there. And I thought that they might have used CGI for like a little bit of the wormy squirmy of Nago. Turns out it wasn't even on Nago. It was on the worms on Ashitaka's arm when he's fighting Nago. And they already painted, like they had the worms there in CGI, but then they painted over it with like just regular animation stuff. So it's like it's not even really there. It was more like a guideline. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. There's two things that you can talk about with this movie. You can talk about the story, which I think is great, but also what you were talking about, the actual technical aspect of the whole movie, the visuals of it, the way it actually looks. the music, everything about it. It's mind blowing. It's just so so much fun to watch. Like I could like Ghibli movies. I had this discussion with somebody else. I think it was actually my tattoo artist. Funny enough, um, that for me, I can always throw a Ghibli movie on in the background while I'm doing anything. Say I'm cleaning my apartment or something. Throw a Ghibli movie on, and we're having a debate like, oh, does that mean they're not that good because you don't really have to pay attention to them? You don't have to use like that much brain power to like follow it, and that it's kind of just like background noise. But I disagree. Like these movies, they're great because if you want to sit down for 2 hours and not think about anything and just watch this, you can get lost in this story. But at the same time, you can just throw it on in the background, do whatever you want, and then sit down a half an hour in and just you're really not that lost. You just enjoy watching it, hearing the music, and I don't know. There's something special about his movies, and specifically with this one. So this is maybe like the sixth. I can't do my ths very well. Time that I've seen this, and I didn't see this till I think summer of 2018. Like this was not one of the first Ghibli movies I ever saw. I actually saw this for the first time in theaters with a Mr. One and Only Paul Zenak uh, at the Neshaminy.
That's right.
Yep, at the Neshaminy AMC, and they were doing Ghibli Fest, and I was like, oh, Paul, like they're doing like Ghibli Fest. Like I was gonna go by myself, and I'm like, hey, you've seen Mononoke, right? He's like, yeah, it's pretty good. I'm like, all right, why don't you come? And we went, and I was not prepared for their like there's gore in this in like the most minimal sense of gore, but it
Yeah.
surprised me more in the sense because I'm like, oh my god, wait a minute, did that man's head just get chopped off? Did his arms just go flying and there was blood? Like what the heck? I'm like, this is a Ghibli movie.
Hell
Um,
yeah.
and it's super surprising, but I just had that memory of seeing it for the first time, and I remember even saying to Paul afterwards, like, "Whoa, like that was really good." And we watched it when we were in New Zealand. I now have a physical copy of it that I've watched plenty of times, and yeah, there's just something about it. I think it's the balance of the seriousness of the movie, like compared to like Totoro. Totoro's not a very serious movie. It's a very super laid back movie, but this is super
Yeah.
serious. Between the character designs, the visuals, the soundtrack, and the actual story, when it comes to something that I can watch over and over and over again, Princess Mononoke is my go-to.
Yeah, it is. It is very good, and I think because I was just listening actually to one of the podcasts that inspired me to constantly bug you to make this podcast, where they were talking about movies. I think they were talking in relation to Godzilla versus Kong, and they were saying something along the lines of like it's a fun thing that you can just kind of put on in the background and you can enjoy it just going back to it every couple of minutes if you're doing something else, but then also if you sit down it's fun to just watch the big monsters punch or like get a more story out of it or something like that. And so yeah, I think this kind of movie, it's it's not bad because it's like you can just go away from it and come back to it at any point and there's like no story. It's actually like it's like a third tier. It's like there's the movies that you can do that with, they're like B tier movies that are just sort of like, yeah, I don't really need to pay attention. There's not much going on. Then there's the movies that you want to pay attention to because it's like, oh, I like if you pay attention to this, you'll actually get a really good story or something out of it. And then at the top of that, you have movies that you can do either with because it's just wonderful to look at, and any scene is just great that you can just hop into and be like, yeah, this is cool. Or you can watch the entire thing and get just as good, if not a better and more fulfilling sort of experience out of it. So, like movies that can do both of those things, that's top of the list, baby. That's top tier right there. And yeah, just going off of what you said with how your first experience with this, God, you didn't see this until college, and that boggles my mind. I didn't see this until I think I was either in sixth or seventh grade, and I was in a Costco with my mom, and we were going up and down, the big old Costco aisles,
Yep.
and yeah, and the it was the DVD section or whatever. I don't know what you call it, because it wasn't an aisle. It was like in the center.
I know
where
you're
it was such
talking
a big
about.
space.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I'm walking down behind my mom, and she's on a mission, she's heading off to wherever she needs to go. And it catches my eye, the style. This was before I knew like anime was its own distinct thing. It's like I knew Dragon Ball and I knew Ghibli, and I was like, yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh and Ghibli look different from pretty much anything else, but my brain wasn't like, oh yeah, that's because it was animated in Japan. It's like, no, I had dumb kid brain. So I was walking past and I see this DVD cover with Ashitaka holding a sword and looking super badass, and I was like, what's this? And I pick it up and I look at it and I see the Ghibli film logo on it, and I'm like, oh, like those pirated DVDs that my dad's friend gave us when we were babies. That's how I saw my first Ghibli films, Spirited Away and Castle in the Sky. They're to this day still on like burnt CDs with the Sharpie titles on the disc, and those are my 2 copies of those movies. But I'll never forget, on the DVD cover, it said Ghibli's Star Wars or something along those lines. And I was just like, hey ma. And she turns around and she's like, what? And I was like, this is like those other movies that we have. And she's like, okay. And so I was like, cool. And I put it in the car and I go home and I put it on. And like you, the first time I see Ashitaka let one of those arrows fly against those samurai guys, and it just takes both of his arms clean off, I was like, oh, this is a different kind of movie. But I was completely there for it.
Yeah. I remember you telling me this story. Yeah, when you said, "Oh, the Star Wars of the East, or like the Asian Star Wars." It was like some like really really bad like thumbnail thumbnail bait clickbait title.
Which, when you think about it, it's like, what's the story of Star Wars? It's the story of like black and white, good versus evil, and then you watch this movie and you're like, that doesn't fucking exist in this movie.
Yeah, the only like connection is the fact that like both of them were like huge successes, and that they're like, oh, these epic movies. But yeah, it's so this movie for both of us, it's not just a movie. It's like there's more to it. There's a lot more nostalgia to it, even if my nostalgia is more recent. So Joe.
Yes.
Besides the fact that my first note says this is my favorite Ghibli movie, my second note is about my girl San.
Oh yeah.
She's my love, man. I mean, I know, guys, our faithful listeners all know Bald Joe. Just he's got a new waifu every week. Picasso.
Some might say he has a commitment issue.
Picasso will always be there, but oh my God, San, like, there's a reason I have San tattooed on my leg.
Yes, that is true. San is the only wife you have tattooed on your body.
Yet.
So far, yes. I'm still waiting for that. I'm still waiting for that Mikasa on your left ass cheek.
And it's gonna be like a sexy Mikasa. It's gonna be.
Is there any other kind, Joe?
That's
back
a great
on
point.
track. Yeah, my first little note that I also have is also from about San, but it's just a quote where when Ashitaka first meets her and he like announces himself and he's like, "I'm looking for the spirit of the forest. Have I finally like found it?" or something like that. And she just gets on the wolf and she just turns back to me. She's like, "Go away." And I just wrote, "Yeah, sure, I'll just do that."
Yo, did you watch the YouTube video I sent you like last week of the dude who made Princess Mononoke into a Game Boy Advance game?
Oh Christ, I don't think I did.
Okay,
No,
okay.
I missed it.
Go back right now.
Mhm.
Right now. It's a
Right
20,
now.
it's a
Yeah, hang on
20
one
minute
sec.
video. At some other point, go back and rewatch that. It is
This is happening now, Joe.
you're gonna
Keep
find
talking.
it. You're gonna find it amazing. So he animated that scene of when Moro's just been shot and San's putting her mouth up to the bullet wound and spitting all the blood out, and Ashitaka's hiding behind the trees. And he animated that scene. He talks about how funny it is that San just basically tells him to fuck off.
Yeah, she's just like, hey, get out of here. And I'm just like, yeah, he's totally going to do that.
Yeah,
Okay, wait, Joe. Yeah, let's go. Okay, here we go.
Hello there. My name's Brandon, and I make pictures.
Hello, Brandon.
And today I'm going to be making some pixel art based on one of my favorite Studio Ghibli films, Princess Mononoke.
Oh, this is so cool.
I'm going to try to keep.
All right, I'm going to describe everything that happened to. Okay, this is a dumb bit. Yeah, I'll watch that video at a later point. It does look very interesting. Thank you for sending me that. Okay.
Let me me. So San
Okay.
is the official best girl. I have a tattoo of her on my leg because I think her character design is the coolest fucking thing. I love her face markings, her face tattoos. I love her personality. I love the mask that she wears.
It is a very cool mask.
Her cloak almost, or it looks like a fur cloak, like maybe one from another wolf.
Maybe, yeah. Do you think it's like a deceased wolf, like wolf sibling, or is it like just the sheddings of the other wolves?
See,
They're big wolves.
Yeah. So I've seen a YouTube video and other people discuss like different theories behind it.
The origins of the cloak.
I think it's like a deceased relative, and they just kind of like made a cloak for her.
Do you think because San's origin story is that like her human parents were fearful of Moro and like threw their infant child at her feet? Do you think Moro was then like there can only be 3 and just offed one of her children?
No, Moro is a tough motherfucker, but I do not think she would do that.
She probably doesn't. She probably wouldn't kill one of her own for a human anyway.
Exactly. So, San, if you watch this movie for anything, watch it for San. She doesn't even get that much screen time.
No,
when you really think about it,
she steals every moment she's there.
Yeah, there's one scene, Joe, when she puts the knife to Ashitaka's neck, or the sword to Ashitaka's neck.
His own sword, yeah.
Yeah, and then when he says, when he calls her beautiful, oh my goodness, her reaction it's so authentic, like it literally scares her. And I remember every time I watch it, it puts the biggest smile on my face.
I always think it's a little like, this kind of comes out of nowhere sort of a thing, but also I'm just sort of just, like I kind of just chalk it up to it being, I don't know, like just a different culture sort of a thing, and then it just kind of like appears, and I'm like, oh, okay. So it's like, I feel like it's not that well integrated, but then after that, like every interaction between them, between Ashitaka and San is great. So I'm just sort of like, that's like the one little speed bump that you hit, and then it's
really?
It's like repaved asphalt for like the rest of the way.
Interesting. See, I love it. Oh my goodness, I think it is absolutely adorable. And like I said, I love
it. It is very adorable.
Okay. So disagree there, but so San, best girl, and Joe, I gotta say, normally I watch I love watching YouTube videos on Ghibli movies. I know you do too, and I hadn't really watched one on Mononoke before, like a video essay, anything like that. So
there's surprisingly not as much as one would think for a film so rich in like thematic storytelling.
Yeah,
like, I looked up some stuff like before we were doing some of this. I just was curious as to what other people were talking about, and a lot of people talk about like the characters being morally gray and how no one is like really an antagonist or things of that sort, and also how like there's the environmentalism messages and things like that. But like after, I don't know, 4 or 5 like video essays that I watched, I was like, that's pretty much it. Everything else is just like a generic review sort of a thing, and I just found that like there's not enough talk about this film, I think.
Yeah, okay, so excuse me, I don't know what happened, but I feel like I have indigestion. I think it's from the Wawa burger, Joe. And every 40 seconds of me just talking, I'm like, I might have a heart attack. So,
oh no.
So if I get short of breath, you know who to call. The Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters, yeah.
Okay. So I found this one video on YouTube, and it talks about the Japanese folklore in Princess Mononoke, and I wanted to share it with you, and I completely forgot, and so I'll do it afterwards. But basically, this guy did this whole video talking about, like, where he thinks, like, okay, what did Miyazaki make up completely? What was he influenced by? And there is a lot of Japanese folklore that gets involved with this movie. Even like the worm, like, I don't even know, like snake like demons that
Yeah, it's like the evil magic that sorcerers would cast, right?
Yep. And there's this whole, it's like a 20-minute long video, and it's really cool. So I'm gonna remember to send that to you. But that was one of the other notes. Like, there's so much folklore to this movie where, like, I feel like I love, and I've said it multiple times, like, I loved Asian and Japanese culture. But just watching this movie, like, even though part of me knows, like, okay, maybe some of this isn't true, just like hearing them talking about the forest spirits and just the history, like that opening voiceover where they talk about how it was the land of the gods and the animals were used to be massive and that they lived in peace with humans and stuff like that. Like, that type of stuff, I eat that up all the time. And so the fact that this movie is extremely environmentalist, I for me that connects with me on a deeper level.
Yeah, it definitely is Miyazaki just trying to be like, hey guys, environment is good and we should not harm it. Do I have to dumb it down anymore for any of the kiddies in the back?
Yes, you do so by watching Pompoko.
Right, of course. God, that movie hurts my brain just trying to remember it. But you do bring up something, because like in the beginning it does say these are like the days back when the forest, but like were the magical places and belonged to the like gods and demons and stuff like that. And so, like, thinking about the movie more so, it's like this is the end of like this film for like this universe, or this, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. It's this story's end as far as like gods and demons go, really, because there's probably more that are like scattered throughout the forest. Like, I don't think Akoto is like the last god. Oh, well, he's also dead now too. But like, Moro and Akoto are probably not the last gods that are present in the forest, but the forest spirit dies at the end. And then again, Moro and Akoto die as well. So really, like, the only forest deities that we see left are the two wolf sons, and then San, who isn't really a god. She's just like a human that was raised by them. So like when you look at it through that lens, and you see after the forest spirit dies and then sends out his energy to, regrow the forest in a bunch of different places, it's kind of sad, or maybe bittersweet as of an ending, because you're just sort of sitting there thinking like, oh yeah, this is the gods and demons, they're all kind of gone now. So it's just, it kind of leaves you in the present as far as like someone would be concerned, because it's just the forest as you've always known it now, without these massive beasts ruling over everything.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also, they hint that at the end, the last scene we see is one of the little Kodamas come back.
Kodama.
But San said it best. Like, San says to Ashitaka, like, even though the forest will grow, the forest spirit's dead. This isn't his forest anymore. Like, things are changing. Yeah. San admits it at the end, and she said it way nicer than the way I said it. But it's that same idea of times are changing, and we have to move on and try and find a way to live together. And that's what San and Ashitaka decide, that like, San admits, like, I'll never be able to forgive the humans, and Ashitaka knows that. So San works with the animals and works with the forest to try and regrow it, and Ashitaka's going to work with the people of Irontown and rebuild it to make it better. And hopefully the whole idea the whole idea of the movie is learning how to live with nature. And respecting nature, not trying to take over it. Like, obviously, yes, it's not telling that humans should be using leaves as toilet paper and we shouldn't have central plumbing and all that stuff. That isn't what it's saying. It's more just be respectful of what you're actually destroying, and don't just treat it like shit. Like,
Yeah.
have some fucking be mindful of what you're doing, and if you have to plow down a forest, like, you got to realize that there's going to be more impact than just killing a couple of animals. Like, that, destroying that part of a forest might destroy the whole, could have a huge effect on the whole ecosystem in itself.
Yeah, exactly. And it is just a wonderful thing to kind of, I think that's probably one of the reasons why you can enjoy this film on so many levels, is because it's not like edutainment, if you will, where it's sort of like, hey, okay, now no littering, kids, or you're gonna wipe your ass with a leaf or something like that. It is more so just being like, hey, we know human progression is a thing, and industrialism will continue on. Like, you can't go backwards, as it were, but you can learn from the past and try and be better and live a more have a more symbiotic relationship with the environment and place that you live on. And so it's like bits like that where it's not lecturing to you to go out and hug a tree, but instead get to know the place that the tree is in and just be like, okay, this place is cool, I should also respect this place. And then also the fact that there are no true villains in the movie, where it's like everyone from Lady Eboshi to San to Moro and Akoto to even how do I pronounce his name? Gijo? Gijo? Which one? The first one?
I believe it's Jigo.
Jigo. Yeah, even to him, where he's the most, in my head, like the most, like, quote unquote ill contempt person. But even he's just sort of like, I'm just doing this thing because the guy above me kind of wants it. I don't really understand why, but whatever, I guess. win in Rome.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, that's one of the good things about this, is the fact that there is no clear black and white, good and evil. It's very much everybody has their own intentions, and every person has a good side, a bad side. Even Ashitaka. Ashitaka is doing this for a selfish reason. He's trying to find the Force Spirit so he can save himself.
Yeah, I always forget that. Like, whenever I'm watching, and then when he meets Akoto, and he's just like, I came here to, beg the Force Spirit to lift my curse, and he healed my bullet wound, but he left the curse. And I was just like, oh yeah, your entire journey was to try and see if you could get this curse lifted. Which, I mean, fair on him. He got the curse trying to protect his town, but in doing so, he killed a god turned demon. So it's like, they're varying shades of gray.
Yes, exactly. And I love Ashitaka as a protagonist. Even then, I feel like in this movie, he has a good amount of lines, but he doesn't take over the whole movie. And I don't know, I just love him. I love how he really is trying to do everything he can to almost like solve everybody's problems. Like, and you see it when San gets mad at him for trying to save Lady Eboshi's life. Like, he knows, like, okay, he knows Lady Eboshi isn't a terrible person. There's a time at the beginning of the movie where he thinks she's terrible, but in the end he realizes, like, she's just trying to make a new kind of new life for these people that she saved. And she doesn't realize that hurting the forest has repercussions. And I don't know, I love how cognizant he is, and really aware of his situation.
Yeah, it's great because he honestly reminds me of Captain America, where it's just sort of like he's come from, let's call it a faraway land, because Ashitaka obviously travels a vast distance, and Cap, it's the same land that he grew up in, but 70 years removed, and he just has an incredibly strong moral code about violence and killing, and not trying to perpetuate this cycle of hate. And both characters are very similar in that sense. They're Boy Scouts, like the quote unquote Boy Scout character, always trying to be goody little two shoes, and it's just them trying to do the best they can in a world that tries to be black and white when they know it's not really that way. And even though they know it's not really black and white, they try to operate in a sense that's still black and white, where it's just sort of like, no, killing is obviously pretty bad. So they try not to. Both of them do, like every once in a while. You know, Ashitaka lets some heads fly, but it's always shown. Yeah, it's always shown, at least in the Princess Mononoke film. You see, like the part that I'm thinking of. It's after, after the Forest Spirit's head has been shot off, and he's telling the samurai that are chasing him, he's like, leave. And then as he grips his sword tighter, you see the mark growing, because like he's about to kill these guys, and he does. He kills one of them, but in response to that, the curse grows on him and further, like, brings him further to death. So it's like a wonderful representation and like visualization of how that sort of violence just eats away at you.
Yeah, Joe. It's the most popular line in the movie, and what kind of guides Ashitaka is what the wise woman told him he has to do. How he and I begin the quote: "He must see with eyes unclouded by hate." And I love that line.
Such a good line.
It's so powerful.
I love it so much. And like even still, like we've done a lot of talking like about the themes and just sort of fallout of like what we think about this movie, but like the opening 15 minutes that all take place in Ashitaka's hometown, like it's a perfect opening, I'd say. It's got the inciting incident of the boar. It then the opening segment of the film is made better by everything else in the film, because you meet Lady Eboshi, who directly caused Nago to become a demon that then came and rampaged to Ashitaka's hometown and cursed him, that brought him out there. So it's like it's this perfect recursive cycle where you see how it like everything impacts each other. And then going back to the opening scene where it's like, okay, so you see the repercussions of what Ashitaka has done immediately in killing this demon, and even all the people in the town, like the old wise woman, she goes up to Nago, who's dying in their fields, and she's just like, oh, boundless god of rage and hate, we bow before you, is the line or something like that.
Yeah.
And she bows along with all the other townsfolk. And it's like, okay, these guys are, at least she is, very wise, obviously it's her name's Wise Woman, and respectful, and doesn't want to be just like a warmongering psychopath, kind of like the Emperor's Samurai that you see scattered throughout the movie. And it's just cool to see that, because it's like that's where Ashitaka comes from, and you can see he perfectly embodies that sort of side of humanity. Someone who wants to be a bit more diplomatic and always use violence as a last resort. It doesn't mean he can't use it, because again, he lets some heads fly, let me tell you. But it's only the last resort.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And Joe, I wanted to get your opinion. There's a little debate online. What is Miyazaki's like kind of like most environmentalist film? Is it this, or is it Nausicaa?
That is a good question. I haven't seen Nausicaa in a couple of years.
Probably the last time you saw it was with me.
Yeah, I think that's probably when the last time I saw it was. I'm gonna say this film off the top of my head, just because like it's obviously it's the freshest in my mind, and it plays such a important part in like every single aspect of the movie. And from what I remember about Nausicaa, my tongue won't work too good from time though. What I remember about Nausicaa is obviously it takes place in like the wasteland sort of thing, and humanity be not so good to environment in that one too. But then I don't know. Oh, but then they're trying to like steal the thing, like the bug, and they're just like, no, this is bad. I'm not gonna recap that. I'm gonna say Mononoke, but that's only because I haven't seen Nausicaa in years.
Okay. At the time of when I was thinking about this, back when I had to watch Nausicaa, and I wrote the paper about it, I said Nausicaa was kind of his like peak environmentalist film, but I don't know. Mononoke, like, it drives the whole freaking movie. So I'd agree with you. And I will say the other thing, just one other little note about this movie is the soundtrack. So many of the scenes, they're good, And then they just become 10 times better with the soundtrack.
Oh hell yeah, the soundtrack in this movie it's awesome. I mean, most Ghibli films, the soundtrack is great, but this one, it's really like you feel it, you know? It really makes you feel like you're in Princess Mononoke
Joe?
and you're Spider-Man.
Joe?
Yeah.
You know, with Miyazaki films, all of them are pretty damn different. Like, it's very much like just he gets this one idea. He's like, yeah, let's roll with that. Like, there's themes, strong girl protagonist, anti-war. He likes airplanes. He likes environment. Like, there's a lot of like similar stuff like that. But there's no like he has never done like a sequel to a movie.
Right.
And I was thinking about it, and after this movie, I'm like, damn, I would watch a sequel to Princess Mononoke.
Do you think it? I don't want a sequel for Princess Mononoke.
I don't know.
Like if he made one, yeah, I don't. I mean, I'd definitely watch it if Miyazaki made a sequel and was just like, "Yep, sequel to Princess Mononoke." But the way this one ends, with San going off to help the not forest folk, like the nature reconstitute itself, and Ashitaka going off to help rebuild Irontown, and then they'll see each other on weekends and all that stuff. I like the way it ends, where it's like it's the bittersweet, but it is hopeful. And I don't need the story's over. I don't need any more.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but it was just one of those thoughts that came into my head where I was like, all right, if he ever made a sequel to one of his movies, I would want it to be this one for me personally.
I guess I need to think about the other ones to agree, but yeah, I don't know. If Miyazaki ever made a sequel to anything, I'd be there no matter what. If it was good or dog shit or whatever, I'd be like, it's a Miyazaki sequel. It's once in a lifetime. Being completely honest, this guy is really old now.
Yeah, big facts. Okay, Joe. I want to know. Actually, okay. What's your rating for Princess Mononoke?
I'm between two numbers, and one would say, Joe, just go with a fraction, but to those people, I say, nay, and shut up. I'm giving Mononoke I'm giving it a 9 out of 10.
Okay. I did a lot of thinking, and this is a 10 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I can understand that. It's very good.
Like, there is nothing I don't like. There's literally nothing. I love all of it. Give me. Like, it's the perfect movie for me. It's not too long. It's long enough where I'm like, wow, that was a really cool experience. Like, it didn't feel like it was, like, just kind of rushed. Like, a perfect amount of time was given to everything. I like the characters. I like the story. I like the visuals. Like, I was just trying to think of something. I'm like, what don't I like? And I couldn't think of anything.
What is it that I do not like? Yeah, and before I give my before I reveal what movie I've picked for next week, I just do want to say Toki is great. I love Toki. Also, she's pretty horny for Ashitaka, and that's kind of funny.
It's hilarious.
It is. It's hilarious. And also, I just want a quick mention the scene when Ashitaka is trying to help one of the Wolf brothers out from underneath the boars. And I only mention it because I love when the townspeople fuck up the mercenaries.
Yes, it was great. They're like, I'm done with this bullshit.
Those darts are poison. Yeah, and everyone just starts smacking the crap out of them. I'm like, yeah, you get him. So yeah, that's great. Okay, so for next week's show, this is a movie that you've heard me talk about before, only very briefly, because it was a part of like the 3-round rotation that I did the coin flip for back what feels like 17 years ago. So this week, I've decided we're going to check out Palm Springs.
Ooh, I don't know anything about Palm Springs.
I know the like a bit of synopsis, I think. But even then, I'm just like, I heard people really enjoyed it. So I'm like, well, give it a go. It's also something that, like, I'm not usually, I don't know, interested in, and I'm like, I enjoy going through and just finding some cool and different stuff. So we'll see how it goes.
Wonderful. I know absolutely nothing of it. I can't. This is like basically the same equivalent of like The Rocketeer, where I can't even have a visual in my mind of what this movie is about.
Nice. Okay, and with that, do you have anything else to add?
San is best girl.
San is best wife. No, San is best girl, and then Toki's best waifu. And with that, everyone, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, listen to the ink for 1 second. Done? 1 second. Good. And with that, I shall say goodbye.